Hey guys, tonight we dive into a world where the phrase build your own home wasn't a cute DIY project with YouTube tutorials and power tools. No, you probably won't survive this one without a few bruises and a serious sense of determination. Picture yourself waking up not in a cozy bedroom, but on bare dirt with nothing but the sky above. You have no hammer, no saw, no contractors texting you back. Just you, your hands, and the impossible job of turning a patch of earth into shelter. So before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. Also, drop your location and local time in the comments. I'm curious where you're tuning in from. Now, dim the lights, maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum, and let's ease into tonight's journey together. You trudge through the morning mist, the chill biting your skin, in a way that makes you wonder if the cold will be the end of you before the wolves or the Lord's tax collectors show up. Your breath forms little clouds that quickly vanish into the grey dawn, and under your feet the earth is uneven, sometimes soft, sometimes stubbornly hard. This is medieval Europe, somewhere between the 9th and 15th centuries, and you're a peasant with a dream that would terrify any modern contractor. Build a house from absolutely nothing, no machines, no help, and probably no choice. The stakes pretty high. Sleep outside on frosty nights, with the wolves howling nearby, or make something that will keep your family alive. You don't just need a roof over your head, you need a fortress against cold rain, wild animals, and most importantly, poverty. But here's the kicker. Nobody is handing you the tools or materials, no delivery trucks, no hardware store, not even a borrowed ladder. You're on your own, armed with willpower, basic tools passed down generations and a lifetime of hard labor ahead. Building a house today might be a weekend hobby for some, a fun project you do with power drills, blueprints, and YouTube tutorials. But for medieval peasants, it was the ultimate survival test, a harsh reality check where one mistake could mean frostbite, starvation, or eviction. And you'll be juggling this while obeying the local lord's rules, who probably doesn't want you building anything too sturdy or impressive on his land anyway. Still, you start with that faint flicker of hope, a patch of dirt, a few trees nearby, and a vision of home. There's a strange beauty in that raw beginning, a chance to shape your own destiny with nothing but hands and heart. But don't get comfortable just yet. The journey from dirt patch to humble home is a long, grueling saga filled with muddy boots, blisters, bone-deep exhaustion, and moments of unexpected camaraderie. Historians still argue whether medieval peasants built their homes alone, out of sheer necessity, or if community effort was the true secret behind every sturdy roof. Either way, the daily grind was relentless, and the stakes couldn't have been higher. So here you are, at the start of a journey that will test your strength, patience, and maybe your sanity. The question is simple. How did medieval peasants, without modern machinery or even basic comforts, build houses that sheltered families for generations? Let's find out. And with that first morning chill biting at your nose, you step forward into the muddy earth, ready to pick the perfect spot to turn into home. Your boots sink slightly into the moist earth as you survey the land, squinting against the low sun filtering through the trees. Choosing a spot for your home isn't as simple as finding a pretty view or a quiet neighborhood. There's no Zillow or Google Maps here, just the harsh reality of medieval life, where land ownership was a tangled web of power and permission. In fact, about 95% of the land in medieval Europe belonged to the local lord or the church. That means you don't actually own the ground beneath your feet. You're more like a temporary tenant with uncertain rights, hoping the Lord doesn't decide your little patch of earth is better suited for hunting or tax farming. You might think, well, just pick any spot, but it's more complicated than that. The Lord's men don't exactly hand out keys with a warm welcome. Sometimes peasants built houses with formal permission. Other times, they quietly cleared a patch of forest and prayed no one noticed. This risky practice was called asarting, and technically it was illegal in many places. If you got caught, expect fines or worse. Yet the potential payoff was too great to ignore a slice of land to call your own, even if the Lord still expected his cut in taxes or produce. So you weigh your options carefully. Location is everything. You want a spot near a stream, or well, fresh water is life itself for drinking, cooking and washing. Nearby forests mean firewood for warmth and timber for building. But watch out for low-lying ground, prone to flooding or swampiness. Muddy feet are one thing, but a soggy home is a death sentence in winter. Interestingly, medieval villages sometimes didn't stay put. Over decades or even centuries, entire communities shifted locations, slowly rebuilding closer to better water sources or safer grounds. No master plan or zoning laws here, just slow adaptations to the environment and survival needs. Your dream neighbourhood might be abandoned in a few generations, but for now, every inch counts. Let's talk neighbours. You're not just fighting nature, you're also navigating feudal social structures. You might have to make deals with other peasants, or craft clever excuses for why you're building that shed a little too close to the Lord's hunting grounds. Sometimes strategic locations meant the difference between peace and a tax raid. There's also the bug factor, literally. Some areas had swarms of biting insects or disease-carrying mosquitoes. Choosing a site meant balancing resources and risks. Historians still argue whether the slow migration of villages was mainly about resources or escaping plagues and invasions. You probably didn't get to call dibs on a sunny hilltop with panoramic views. More likely, you found a patch at the forest's edge where you could gather enough materials and hide your efforts from prying eyes. Maybe a small clearing near a stream where you could wash off the grime after a day of labour. Once you settle on your spot, you mark it roughly, stakes driven into the earth, outlining where your home will rise. No laser levels or measuring tapes here, just experience passed down from generations and a bit of guesswork. That uneven line in the dirt will soon become your fortress against cold nights and wild animals. Choosing the perfect spot is part science, part desperation, and part luck. It's a test of your survival instincts and your ability to read the land like a book. And with that, the real work begins, hauling in the raw materials that will form the bones of your home. But don't get ahead of yourself. Before you start chopping trees and dragging logs, there's a whole world of laws, dangers, and backbreaking labour waiting for you just outside that chosen patch. You stand at the forest's edge, staring into a dense tangle of trees, knowing the timber hidden inside is the lifeblood of your future home. This isn't a leisurely hike to pick up a few branches. It's a mission fraught with legal risks, physical exhaustion, and a fair share of adrenaline. Medieval forests weren't just a patch of trees. They were carefully guarded kingdoms, often controlled by strict forest laws enforced by the Lord or the Church. You could gather deadwood for your fire, but chopping down a live tree, that was a crime sometimes punishable by harsh penalties including fines, or in extreme cases, the loss of a hand. So you had to be cunning and cautious. The first challenge, the sheer weight of the logs. You might dream of a lumberjack with a chainsaw, but your only tools are a dull axe, a wooden sled and a lot of muscle. The roads you'll use are muddy tracks that turn into a sticky mess. After rain, imagine dragging a tree trunk that's heavier than you, across mud that sucks at your boots with every step. This was the original drag and drop interface, minus the convenience. But the forest is more than just trees. It's home to wolves, bears and bandits, who see lone travellers like you as easy targets. Timber hunting often meant going in groups, not only for extra hands but for safety. Sometimes these excursions became social events with grunts, laughter, and the occasional battle with stubborn logs or wild animals. The forest wasn't just a resource, it was a battleground. You grip your axe, a prized possession, often handed down through generations. It's no lightweight tool, balanced and sharp, but blunt enough to demand respect. Every swing must count, every strike precise. Cutting greenwood in the right season matters too. Freshly cut timber bends easier for curved pieces, but dries and cracks later, while dry wood is harder to work but more stable. Many builders planned their cuts for winter, when sap levels were low, then let the wood season for months before construction. Once felled, the logs need splitting. You use wooden or iron wedges hammered by mallets to divide massive trunks into manageable beams. It's exhausting work, fingers blistered and backs aching before the real journey begins. Hauling timber home often limited your building radius to just a mile or two from the forest's edge. Beyond that, it was humanly impossible. Every step back feels like a marathon, through sticky mud and over hidden roots. If you slip, the logs don't. They keep rolling and dragging you along for a bruising ride. Bandits watching from shadows add a layer of tension, as does the possibility of a sudden storm turning the trail into a river of muck. Historians still argue whether medieval peasants had organised systems for timber collection, or if it was more chaotic and opportunistic. Either way, the process demanded strength, patience, and a certain acceptance of pain. After days or weeks of gathering, splitting, and hauling, you finally stack your pile of timber at the site, a tangible symbol of your progress, and a silent promise that your dream home is inching closer to reality. But the hard part isn't over. Now you need to turn those stubborn logs into a sturdy frame without a nail or power tool in sight. And as your muscles scream in protest, you realize that your journey has just begun. You wipe the sweat from your brow, looking down at the pile of timber you dragged through mud, thorns, and maybe a bear's territory or two. Now your challenge is to transform these rough logs into the skeleton of your home using the most basic tools and axe wedges and your wits. There are no power saws, no electric drills, not even a handful of nails. Instead, you rely on centuries-old craftsmanship that combines simple tools with ingenious techniques. Your axe is the star of the show, both tool and legacy. Passed down from your grandfather, it's seen more winters than you've lived, and still bites sharp enough to shape wood. With it, you trim branches, square off beams, and carve intricate joints that hold everything together. Those joints, mortise and tenon, think of them as wooden puzzles, a hole cut into one beam and a matching tongue on another that fits snugly like the lock on a treasure chest. No nails needed, just pure woodworking magic. To split logs, you use wooden or iron wedges hammered by mallets. Every strike sends splinters flying, but careful technique turns tough oak into manageable beams. You know that oak is king for your main support posts, strong, durable, and with a history of standing tall for centuries. But for the flexible parts of the house, you hunt hazel willow or young ash saplings, thin enough to weave but sturdy enough to hold walls together. There's a rhythm to your work, a slow dance between muscle tool and timber. You pause to catch your breath, admire the grain of a freshly shaped beam, and maybe even mumble a sarcastic comment about how power tools would be nice right about now. The absence of nails means every joint must be precise. A poorly cut mortise might mean the whole frame sags or worse collapses. One wrong move and your house becomes a very expensive pile of sticks. Wooden pegs called tree nails are your fasteners. Made from hardwood like oak or maple, they're hammered through overlapping beams. Here's the clever part: when wet, these pegs swell, tightening the joints during rainy seasons. It's like nature's own glue, keeping your home secure without a single metal nail. Working with such primitive tools requires patience. The wood behaves differently depending on the season, moisture, and species. Cutting greenwood gives you flexibility, but risks shrinkage and cracks later. Dry wood is tougher but more stable. You've learned to cut in winter and let the wood season a practice that could take months before construction begins. But let's be honest, the hardest part isn't shaping the wood, it's lifting it. Imagine trying to raise a 20-foot oak beam by yourself. You'd quickly become the village pancake. That's why raising the frame is a community effort, but more on that later. Historians still debate how widespread these sophisticated woodworking techniques were among peasants. Some argue these skills belonged only to specialized craftsmen, while others believe village builders learned by doing passing knowledge informally. You work with slow, deliberate strokes, turning raw logs into the building blocks of your future home. It's back-breaking labor, but there's pride in every chip and every joint perfectly fitted. Without these timeless techniques, your home wouldn't last the first winter. As you stack the finished beams neatly by the building site, your arms ache. Your clothes are smeared with sap and dirt, and your mind drifts toward the next step, turning these bones into a house that can keep rain and wolves at bay. The frame stands in scattered piles around your chosen spot, like a giant awkward jigsaw puzzle waiting to be assembled. But this is no solo job. Raising those heavy oak beams into place requires every strong arm in the village, plus a healthy dose of cooperation, coordination, and a bit of luck. Building your house quickly becomes the ultimate team sport, where survival depends on your neighbours just as much as your own muscle. You can almost hear the grunts, the shouted instructions, the occasional curse as 10 or more villagers gather to lift each post and beam. Imagine the awkwardness of trying to hoist a 20-foot timber upright, balancing on uneven ground with only ropes, wooden poles, and sheer determination. One slip and you don't just drop a beam, you risk turning your friend into a human pancake. Digging the post holes is backbreaking work too. 2 feet deep and lined with stones for drainage, these holes anchor the frame to the earth, protecting wood from rot. Tools are rudimentary wooden shovels, iron spades if you're lucky, and the dirt fights back with every scoop. The ground might be hard clay or sticky mud, and rain can turn the whole site into a muddy quagmire that turns your noble construction effort into a slapstick comedy of slips and falls. Mortise and tenon joints come into play again here. As beams are raised, they slot together like pieces of a puzzle. No nails, just centuries of perfected woodworking. Wooden pegs hammered through, beam overlaps swell when wet to lock the structure tight. The sheer engineering brilliance hidden in these humble joints is staggering. Some frames built this way have stood for over 500 years. But the real magic isn't in the wood or the joints, it's in the unspoken rules of the village. Everyone pitches in, because today it's your house, tomorrow it might be theirs. Refuse to help your neighbour, and don't expect any volunteers when your roof needs mending. The village's social fabric depends on cooperation, trust, and a healthy dose of peer pressure. Building a house this way was dangerous. Records from medieval construction sites tell tales of accidents. 3 men injured when a roof beam slipped, crushed fingers, broken bones. Safety gear. Just grit and prayer. Raising the roof beams required precise timing and coordination as heavy timbers were hoisted into place with ropes and poles. Despite the chaos, the atmosphere could be festive. Timber harvesting turned into social events. House-raising days were filled with food, drink, and stories. For a moment, the hardship softened into camaraderie, a rare break from the daily grind. Historians still argue how much these communal efforts were spontaneous social gatherings versus organised labour obligations imposed by lords. Either way, the shared effort created bonds stronger than the oak beams they lifted. As the skeleton of your home rises, you can finally see the shape taking form, a promise of shelter, safety, and a future. But with the frame standing tall comes the next big challenge, filling those empty spaces and turning a skeleton into a livable home. Now that your sturdy timber frame stands tall, like the bones of a giant, you face a new kind of challenge, transforming that skeletal outline into a solid weatherproof shelter. Walls aren't just decorative. They must hold out wind rain and pesky intruders, both human and insect. Without modern drywall or bricks, medieval peasants turned to an ancient, messy, and surprisingly effective method called wattle and daub. You start by weaving thin, flexible branches, usually hazel willow or young ash, between the upright posts of your frame. It looks like crafting an enormous basket, a lattice of sticks crisscrossing to form the framework for your walls. This wattle is sturdy enough to hold the next layer, but still lightweight and forgiving under your hands. It's a delicate balance between art and necessity. Next comes the daub, a sticky, thick mixture slathered over both sides of the woven sticks, filling gaps and binding everything together. And here's the part that makes most people today wrinkle their noses: animal manure. Yes, medieval builders swore by cow dung as the secret adhesive in their wall recipe, but it's not just gross folklore. The manure contains natural binding agents that add strength to the mixture. The daub mix also includes clay soil, sand and straw, each ingredient playing a role. Clay provides body, sand stops cracks, straw adds tensile strength, and the manure binds it all in place. Children even joined in stomping the mixture in a pit, turning what sounds like a dirty chore into a muddy playtime. Applying the daub requires skill, slapping it thickly over the wattle on both sides, simultaneously pressing it through the gaps until the two surfaces meet in the middle. You smooth the surface with wooden floats, or your hands creating walls that are rough but effective. Then comes the hardest part: waiting. The walls need weeks to dry properly, and weather can make or break your efforts. Too much rain can wash away freshly applied daub, forcing you to start over. Some families fortunate enough to afford lime whitewash coated their walls after drying. This bright finish sealed the surface, deterred insects, and reflected light into the dim interiors, an early medieval version of both paint and pest control. It also gave the homes a cheerful look, standing out in otherwise earthy villages. These walls, made mostly from dirt and poop, offer decent insulation and durability. Archaeological digs reveal wattle and daub walls lasting hundreds of years when maintained properly, a testament to the peasants' practical chemistry. Of course, this method wasn't perfect. The walls cracked in dry spells and could dissolve with too much moisture. Repairs were a constant chore, often involving scraping and reapplying daub or replacing sections of wattle. Despite the mess and maintenance, this building technique was the backbone of over 90% of medieval peasant homes. It was cheap, used local materials, and could be repaired by the family itself without expensive specialists. Historians still debate how much knowledge peasants had of the science behind wattle and daub, but one thing's clear: they knew it worked, and they knew their homes depended on mastering this sticky craft. With the walls finally enclosing your space, your house begins to feel like a real home. But above your head, a whole new challenge awaits: keeping the rain off with a roof that's both light and protective. You lift your gaze upward, where the roof will soon crown your home, and the task ahead is no less daunting. Without slate tiles or metal sheets, medieval peasants turned to nature's bounty for roofing thatch. A thick layered covering made from straw, reeds or grasses thatch might sound fragile, but it was surprisingly effective when done right. Gathering the materials was a massive undertaking. Depending on your location, you might collect wheat straw from harvested fields or water reeds from marshy areas. Each type had its own benefits. Straw was plentiful in farming regions, while water reeds offered durability near rivers and wetlands. Either way, hauling tons of dried plant material required teamwork and timing. Thatch needed to be dry and properly bundled to resist rot and repel water. The thatching process was both an art and a science. Starting from the bottom edge of the roof, bundles of straw were laid thickly and secured to the wooden rafters using split hazel branches called sways. These flexible branches were bent over the bundles and tied tight, holding everything firmly in place. The thatcher worked upward, overlapping each new layer like shingles on a modern roof, ensuring rainwater would run off quickly. The angle of the roof mattered greatly. Too shallow and rain would soak through. Too steep, and the thatcher risked sliding off to an unplanned, painful fall. Most roofs pitched between 45 and 60 degrees, striking a balance between water runoff and safety. Thickness was crucial too often, 12 to 15 inches deep. The thatch provided excellent insulation, keeping homes warm in winter and cool in summer. But thatch had a dark side. Fire was the ever-present enemy. A single spark from the central hearth could ignite the dry roof, turning a cosy home into a blazing ruin within minutes. Many medieval towns eventually banned thatch roofs after devastating fires swept through entire neighbourhoods. Archaeologists have found charred timbers in about 1 out of every 5 excavated medieval homes, a grim reminder of this danger. And the roof wasn't just a shield against weather, it was a habitat for uninvited guests. Birds, mice, insects, and even snakes found refuge in the thick thatch, making your roof a lively, if unwanted, menagerie. Early alarm clocks. Just wait for the birds to start chirping in the morning, right above your head. Despite these drawbacks, well-maintained thatch roofs could last between 15 and 25 years. In ideal conditions, water-reed thatch could survive up to 50 or 60 years, a testament to medieval thatchers' skill. When a roof wore out, old thatch wasn't wasted. It found new life as garden mulch or cosy bedding for animals. Thatched roofs were one of the few specialised trades accessible to peasants, and skilled thatchers held respected roles in their communities. Mastering the craft was a matter of pride and necessity. Historians still debate how much roof building knowledge was passed through generations versus learned in apprenticeships. Regardless, the thatch roof was nature's gift, and curse offering shelter and warmth, but lurking with risks that kept peasants wary. With your walls standing firm and the thatch roof layered thick above your humble home, begins to resemble a real shelter. But inside awaits another set of challenges: how to make that hard shell a livable space for you and your family. You step inside your newly enclosed home, the earth floor cool beneath your bare feet. Unlike the polished surfaces you might expect in modern houses, medieval floors were simply packed dirt, a continuation of the outside world brought indoors. At first glance, it feels rough, uneven, and a little disappointing, but with time and effort, the peasants learned to tame this humble foundation. To improve their floors, families mixed in materials like straw crushed shells, sand or stone chips, then tamped the mixture down until it hardened nearly as solid as concrete. In wealthier homes, a thin layer of lime might be added on top, lending a smoother finish. Floors often sloped gently toward one corner or edge to allow spills and rainwater that sneaked in to drain outside, because let's be honest, medieval homes were no strangers to a little indoor mud. The walls inside were equally simple. While some families could afford lime whitewash to brighten and seal their wattle and daub walls, many left them bare, with their natural earthy tones serving as the backdrop for daily life. The texture was rough and colours muted, but it was home. Decorating them meant hanging whatever possessions you had on wooden pegs nailed to beams, blankets, tools, and even pots and pans. Shelves were rare, storage was creative by necessity. Furniture was sparse and utilitarian. Wooden benches doubled as sleeping platforms, lining the walls to conserve precious space. Tables were often just boards laid across trestles, easily dismantled when more room was needed. If IKEA had existed, their instruction manuals would likely have consisted of a single word: good luck. Space was at a premium. Your average peasant house measured about 15 by 20 feet, but needed to accommodate a family of 5 to 8 plus animals during the bitter winter months. Speaking of animals, you probably won't be surprised to learn that privacy was basically non-existent. Chickens, goats, and other small livestock shared the living space, providing essential body heat to stave off the cold. Imagine the kind of family bonding that involves huddling together on raised sleeping platforms, stuffed with straw or hay, all packed tight enough to keep the frost at bay. Light came from a single open door during the day and from the flickering fire at night. Windows were rare or covered with oiled parchment instead of glass, which meant interiors were dim, smoky, and filled with the scent of wood smoke animals and the earth itself. Despite the cramped quarters and minimal comforts, these homes functioned remarkably well for their time. Life was a constant balancing act between utility and survival, where every inch was used wisely and every possession had a purpose. Historians still debate whether such close living quarters fostered stronger family bonds or simply compounded daily hardships. Either way, the peasant home was a hub of life work and warmth in a harsh world. But warmth wasn't just from close bodies. The heart of the home and its most dangerous element awaited at the centre, the fire. At the heart of your modest home, the open hearth blazes a vital source of warmth, light, and sustenance. Unlike modern houses with neat chimneys and controlled furnaces, your medieval abode features a simple fire pit, smack dab in the middle of the living space. This wasn't a design choice meant to impress, it was a practical necessity. With one room serving as kitchen, workshop and bedroom, the hearth's central location allowed heat to radiate outward, evenly reaching every corner and every chilled bone. Gathering fuel is an art and a chore in itself. Wood is king, of course, but dried peat straw, animal dung, or even seaweed along the coast become precious alternatives during lean times. You haul and stack these materials carefully, knowing that without a steady fire, winter nights could be fatal. The smokewell's smoke becomes an unavoidable roommate. Without a chimney, the haze lingers, curling around the low ceiling beams and blackening them with soot. Peasants developed a grim tolerance, but visitors often found their eyes stinging and lungs gasping for fresh air. Cooking happens right over or beside the open flame. Cauldrons hang from tripods or hooks, simmering stews of root vegetables, grains, and whatever meat is available, often less than one might hope. Bread bakes near the fire, though baking was a communal affair in many villages, with peasant households using communal ovens. Flames provide not just heat and cooking, but a social focal point. Stories, plans, and songs circle the fire, keeping spirits alive amid the hardships. But fire's warmth is a double-edged sword. One stray spark can ignite the dry thatch above, turning your haven into a blazing inferno in moments. Fire was a constant threat, and many villages suffered devastating blazes that destroyed homes and livelihoods alike. You balance the need to keep the fire roaring against the risk of disaster, a daily tightrope act requiring vigilance and care. Fire tools were minimal, and firefighting was often limited to buckets of water or dirt and frantic neighbourly efforts. Historians still debate how effective early chimneys were, and when exactly they became widespread, but for most of the medieval period, open hearths dominated shaping not just architecture, but daily life. Managing the hearth smoke also shaped home design. Low ceilings and small windows meant smoke hung thick, but wider chimneys could let in cold drafts. So peasants made do, coughing and squinting, but thankful for the fire's embrace. Keeping a medieval home standing was about more than the fire. It was an ongoing battle with time, weather, and nature's relentless forces. Maintenance wasn't a weekend task, it was constant survival. Walls cracked, roofs leaked, and animals made themselves at home. But that's a story for the next chapter, as you learn that building a home is just the start of an endless fight to keep it standing. As the fire's warm glow fades behind you, you step back into the relentless reality of home ownership in medieval times. Unlike today's homeowners, who might grumble about a leaky faucet or a creaky door, peasants faced a never-ending battle against nature's wrath and the wear of time. Maintaining a house built from sticks, mud, and thatch was not a casual chore. It was a constant struggle to keep a fragile fortress standing. Your wattle and daub walls are prone to cracking in dry spells, and the rainy seasons threaten to dissolve your hard-won work. Every dry crack is a warning, every patch of dampness a signal that repairs must come soon. You learn to watch your walls, carefully reading their subtle changes like an old friend warning of trouble. Lime whitewashing becomes your early alert system. When the bright white starts to turn brown, it's time to get to work patching cracks before they become holes. Your roof, that thick thatch of straw or reeds, battles the elements daily. Storms tear away chunks, birds pull nesting materials, and insects burrow into the fibres. You keep a repair kit handy, a bone knife for trimming a mallet for hammering replacement wattle, and spare bundles of thatch. The roof isn't just protection, it's a living thing requiring constant tending. Repairing isn't a once-in-a-while event. Archaeological evidence shows many peasant homes underwent multiple major repairs, sometimes even complete rebuilds on the same footprint every 30 to 40 years. It's a cycle of work that never truly ends. You're not just repairing your home, you're fighting against rot weather and time itself. Every winter storm tests your handiwork, every spring thaw reveals new cracks, and every summer brings threats from pests. It's an exhausting rhythm, a lifetime commitment. Animals add to the challenge. Mice, rats, and birds find refuge in your thatch and walls, chewing away at your defences. Their presence isn't just a nuisance, it's a threat to the structural integrity of your shelter. Historians still debate how peasants manage these constant repairs alongside their grueling daily labour. Some argue that communal efforts lightened the load, while others suggest families bore most of the burden alone. You quickly realise that medieval home ownership means never truly finishing your work. There's no set it and forget it with mud and sticks. Instead, it's a relentless cycle of vigilance, repair and renewal each season, bringing new tests to your home's resilience. Yet despite this endless upkeep, these humble houses sheltered generations, standing as silent witnesses to the perseverance and ingenuity of their builders. With walls patched and roof trimmed, you return inside, facing a challenge even more personal, the closeness of life under one roof. Inside your humble home, privacy is a luxury long forgotten, if it ever existed at all. You and your family share a single room, packed tight like a huddle of survivors in a storm. Parents, children, and sometimes grandparents squeeze together on raised sleeping platforms, lined with straw or hay, while chickens and goats nestle close by, offering warmth that no fire could match. This is medieval close living at its most intense. Imagine trying to find a moment alone when the whole family sleeps, eats, works, and breathes in one shared space. Walls barely exist to divide lives, and the concept of your room is laughable. Medieval children never heard the classic line, "Go to your room," because there simply was no separate room for them. Instead, they learned early the art of coexistence, tolerating noise smells and squabbles in tight quarters. Storage is another creative challenge. With limited space and few pieces of furniture, belongings hang from wooden pegs nailed into walls or beams overhead. Baskets hold smaller items, while root vegetables find cool refuge in clay-lined pits or corners of the floor. Every inch of the home is utilised, and clutter is a constant companion. Meals happen around the central hearth, where family members share wooden bowls, and trenches stale bread used as plates. Cutlery is scarce, and fingers serve as the original forks. The main meal usually occurs at midday, with everyone gathered close, sharing not only food, but stories and news from the village. Hygiene practices, while simple, were surprisingly thoughtful. Most peasants washed their hands and faces daily, using water carried from nearby streams or wells. Full body bathing was a rare luxury, usually reserved for summer and special occasions. The ever-present smoke from the hearth served a secondary role in keeping some pests at bay, though breathing it was a different matter entirely. You quickly learn that living this close requires patience, cooperation, and a good sense of humour. Arguments might flare in the tight quarters, but so do moments of joy and warmth born from shared hardship. Historians still debate the social dynamics of such close living. Did it foster stronger family bonds, or did it fuel tensions and escapes to the fields? Either way, the peasant home was a hive of life, busy, cramped, and full of resilience. Outside your shelter stands weathered but proud. Inside it pulses with the rhythms of daily life, work, rest, laughter, and love woven tightly into the fabric of survival. As night falls, you settle in near the hearth once more, grateful for the warmth and the shelter you've built. But remember, your journey isn't over until the final test. How long can this fragile home endure the relentless march of time and nature? The seasons turn, years pass, and your home born from sweat, mud, wood and thatch stands firm against the elements. Despite endless repairs and threats from fire, pests and weather, some medieval peasant houses endured for centuries, a testament to the skill, resilience and stubbornness of their builders. You glance at your home now, knowing that it's more than just shelter. It's a symbol of community effort, tradition, and survival against harsh odds. Archaeologists uncover wooden frames and wattle and daub walls that have lasted over 500 years, whispering stories of families long gone but never forgotten. Yet your house's endurance depends not just on materials, but on the continuous care of generations. It's rebuilt, patched, whitewashed and thatched anew, each act a labour of love and necessity. This cycle of maintenance kept homes standing where grander castles crumbled. The skills needed to build and maintain these homes were passed down orally and through hands-on learning, creating a living heritage. Villagers shared knowledge about which woods lasted longest, how to mix daub for strength, and when to harvest thatch for durability. Historians still debate how much of this knowledge was formalised versus improvised. But one thing is certain, medieval peasants were master builders in their own right, their homes reflecting a deep understanding of nature, materials and community. As you step back from your modest dwelling, you realise that building a house without modern machinery wasn't just about survival, it was about creating a home that could weather centuries of storms, human and natural alike. And so, as night deepens and the fire flickers low, your home stands a humble monument to endurance, hope, and the unyielding spirit of those who shaped it. The years slip by like leaves on a stream, seasons folding into one another, as your modest home, crafted from nothing but wood, mud and thatch, stands steadfast against the relentless march of time. Despite the endless battles with weather, pests, fire, and the wear of decades, some medieval peasant houses have defied the odds, surviving for centuries, quiet monuments to the resilience, ingenuity and sheer stubbornness of their builders. You might find it hard to believe, but archaeological digs have uncovered timber frames and wattle and daub walls still standing after 500 years or more, whispering the stories of families long gone, but whose spirit lingers in those worn beams and cracked walls. Your house is no mere shelter, it is a living legacy. It embodies the sweat and grit of countless hands that shaped it, repaired it, and renewed it across generations. Each patch of daub, every re-thatched roof, and every whitewashed wall speaks of a labour of love and survival. Where grand castles of stone and mortar have crumbled into ruins, these humble homes endure because of the continuous care bestowed upon them by those who called them home. The knowledge to build and maintain such a dwelling was passed down not in books but through oral tradition and hands-on apprenticeship, an ancient craft that made peasants into master builders in their own right. Villagers shared secrets which oak lasted longest for a sturdy post. The perfect mix of clay, straw, and manure to make daub that clings tight to the best time to harvest reeds, to thatch a roof that would stand firm against storms. This was knowledge born of necessity and perfected through trial, error, and observation. Historians still debate how formalized this wisdom was, whether it was strictly learned from elders or whether it evolved from improvisation and sheer need. But one thing is certain, these homes were marvels of practical engineering and resourcefulness. Your house standing quiet in the fading light is more than wood and mud. It is a testament to community tradition and the unyielding human spirit. It reflects an intimate dance with nature, using what was available, respecting the rhythms of seasons, and mastering the materials that would keep families safe through harsh winters, scorching summers, and the inevitable challenges of medieval life. You realize that building a home without modern machinery was never just about shelter. It was about creating something durable, adaptable, and filled with life. Something that could shelter generations' weather storms, both literal and figurative, and become the heart of a family's story. These homes taught lessons of patience, cooperation, and ingenuity that modern comforts can often overshadow. As dusk turns to night, you stand outside your humble abode, feeling the cool breeze whisper through the trees, the scent of thatch and earth mingling in the air. The fire inside flickers softly, a beacon of warmth and life. Your house is battered but standing proof that even the simplest structures, built by the most unassuming hands, carry the weight of history and hope. And now, as you prepare to rest, imagine the soft hush of night settling over the land, the gentle crackle of embers dying, and the quiet peace that follows a day's toil. Let your breath slow, your thoughts soften, and the comfort of this enduring shelter lull you into calm. Sleep well, knowing that the homes of the past stand sturdy. Not just because of timber and clay, but because of the hearts that built them. Now, as we let the story settle, imagine the soft glow of embers fading the cool night air, wrapping gently around your shoulders, and the quiet peace that follows a day's hard work. Rest easy, knowing that even the simplest homes hold the richest stories. Sleep well, and may your dreams be as sturdy and warm as the houses built long ago. You might think medieval peasants lived hand to mouth, armed with nothing more than crude sticks and dull axes. But take a closer look and you'll discover a toolbox of surprisingly clever handmade tools that reveal a world of resourcefulness and craftsmanship. Every item was born from necessity, passed down through generations, and lovingly maintained as the village's lifeline to survival. At the core is the axe, a symbol of power and survival, not just a chopping instrument, but a multi-purpose marvel. Some axes had curved blades for shaping wood, others were designed for splitting logs. The handle itself was carefully carved from flexible hardwood to absorb shock and improve grip. This wasn't the kind of axe you toss around recklessly. It was your legacy, your trusted companion. Alongside the axe, wooden mallets and wedges played vital roles. Imagine pounding a wooden wedge into a massive oak log to split it, each hammer strike precise, steady and strong. These wedges, often made from ash or hornbeam, were surprisingly durable. The mallets, carved from dense hardwood, were gentle enough to avoid damaging the wedges, but powerful enough to do the job. Together they turned giant logs into manageable beams without power tools. For measuring and marking, peasants used simple tools that any craftsman would recognize: a plumber bob made from stone or metal, hung on a string to check vertical lines, or a chalk line stretched tight to mark straight cuts. None of this was flashy, but each was essential to keeping your home square and stable. Ever hear of a draw knife? It was a handheld tool with a blade stretched between two handles used to shave bark and smooth rough timber. Pull it toward you in long strokes, and the wood gradually shapes into smooth beams and rounded poles. Like all medieval tools, it required skill and patience. In place of nails, pegs made from seasoned hardwoods held beams together. These pegs swelled with moisture, tightening joints naturally. It's a brilliant, eco-friendly fastening system that few modern DIYers would guess originated centuries ago. Historians debate just how much peasants crafted their own tools versus borrowing or trading. But evidence suggests many families maintained their own sets, often with basic workshops attached to their homes. This self-reliance was essential in a world where travelling to a blacksmith might be days away. And let's not forget the ingenuity involved in improvising, when metal was scarce wooden tools and even bone knives came into play. One peasant's knife might be a sharpened piece of deer antler, perfect for trimming thatch or shaping wattle branches. These tools tell stories of survival and skill, how a simple axe could be a weapon, a carpenter's instrument, and a legacy handed from parent to child. The tools were as much a part of the home as the walls and roof, silent witnesses to the endless work and care poured into every humble dwelling. So next time you pick up a hammer or saw, remember the medieval peasant who did the same, with far less comfort, crafting a home from nothing but wood, sweat, and sheer will. Building a house in medieval times was never a solo venture. Beyond the wood and mud, the true foundation of a home was the community itself, a network of neighbours, family and friends, bound together by shared hardship and mutual aid. The act of building transformed into a social event, a time to come together, share stories, food and a sense of belonging. When it came time to raise the frame, the whole village turned out. It was a day of laughter, grunts, and the creak of massive beams rising. Men and women, young and old, lent hands and voices, shouting encouragement and coordinating the lifting of heavy timbers. Women brought food and drink, feeding hungry labourers with hearty stews, bread and ale. Children ran around watching with wide eyes and learning the craft. This communal labour wasn't just charity, it was an unwritten contract. Help your neighbour raise their home, and when your roof leaked or your walls cracked, you could count on their hands in return. Refusing to participate risked social isolation, a dangerous fate in a world where survival depended on cooperation. Festivities often accompanied these days. After the work, villagers celebrated with music, dancing, and storytelling. These moments of joy punctuated the harshness of daily life, strengthening bonds and providing a much-needed respite from toil. The building process became a rite of passage, a shared memory that tied individuals to place and people. Church holidays and festivals sometimes aligned with construction cycles, adding spiritual significance to the labour. Blessings were offered for safety and prosperity, while the community's hopes and fears wove through every beam raised and every wall daubed. Historians debate the extent to which lords controlled or encouraged these communal efforts. Some argue that lordly demands for labour forced peasants into obligatory work gangs, while others see the social fabric as more self-organised and cooperative. Regardless, this interdependence was crucial. Beyond bricks and mortar, homes were built on trust and reciprocity. The collective spirit was the invisible mortar holding the village and its houses together. Your medieval home is not just a shelter, but a constant battleground against nature's whims. Weather in medieval Europe was unforgiving, long harsh winters with biting cold, unpredictable rains turning fields into mud seas, summers that could scorch or bring storms, and winds that tested even the sturdiest walls. Winter was the cruelest season. Snow piled high and temperatures plunged. Your thatch roof's thick insulation keeps the worst out, but the cold seeps in around every crack. The open hearth roars, but smoke fills the small room, your eyes watering as you huddle close to the fire with your family and animals. The floor's packed dirt becomes icy in spots, and you carefully navigate to avoid slips. Rain brings its own challenges. Without gutters or modern drainage water pools around your home's foundation, mudslides threaten the walls and wet daub softens, requiring constant repair. Roofs leak, and dampness encourages rot in wooden beams. You rush to patch holes, trim damaged thatch, and keep animals sheltered. Spring and summer offer relief and work. Fields burst into life, and you gather fresh materials, reeds for roofing, clay for walls, timber for repairs. But seasonal storms can bring fierce winds that tear at your roof and walls, and sudden floods threaten to wash away everything. Lightning strikes bring fear of fire, a neighbour's home going up in flames, a cautionary tale. The changing seasons dictate every aspect of your life, from when to harvest wood, to when to repair thatch, and even when to plan construction projects. The medieval calendar was tied tightly to nature's rhythms. Historians still debate the extent to which medieval climate variability, the so-called Little Ice Age, impacted peasant homes and survival. Some argue colder, wetter periods made building and upkeep more challenging, pushing communities to innovate and adapt. Living so intimately with the elements forged a deep understanding of the land and its moods. Your home, humble though it was, stood as both shield and symbol, proof that human ingenuity and determination could carve out shelter in even the harshest conditions. Step inside your medieval home, and you quickly realize it's more than just wood, mud, and thatch. It's a living, breathing space shaped by fire, smoke, air, and the people and animals who share it. Without modern ventilation systems, managing airflow was a delicate and vital art, a constant balancing act between keeping out the chill and letting smoke escape. The open hearth blazing at the centre is both life-giver and smoke-maker, filling the air with warmth and a persistent haze that clings to walls and ceilings. Windows, if present at all, are small, often mere slits in the walls, covered not with glass but with thin sheets of oiled parchment or animal hide. These allow some diffused light but little fresh air. Doors must remain closed to keep out cold winds and prowling animals, so the house relies heavily on natural gaps between the roof and walls under doorways, or through cracks in the wattle and daub to let smoke escape and air circulate. These tiny channels serve as makeshift chimneys, but they also let in drafts that chill the inhabitants, requiring layers of clothing and blankets to fend off the cold. The smoke itself, while irritating to eyes and lungs, played a surprisingly beneficial role. It helped preserve wooden beams by slowing decay and deterring insects, and natural fumigation that modern science only recently began to understand. Villagers grew accustomed to this smoky haze, developing a tolerance that outsiders found overwhelming. Visitors often left coughing and tearing up, while peasants went about their lives mostly unaffected. Humidity inside the home fluctuated with the seasons, the number of people and animals inside, and the ever-present fire. Managing moisture was crucial to prevent mold rot and disease. Peasants regularly whitewashed their walls with lime, a practice that not only brightened the gloomy interior, but also helped control moisture levels and inhibit microbial growth. The lime's alkaline nature created an inhospitable environment for pests and fungi, contributing to the home's longevity. The floors of packed earth, often damp, absorbed and released moisture, interacting with the indoor environment in subtle ways. During cold months, moisture condensation was a constant challenge, making keeping bedding dry and living spaces comfortable a daily struggle. To combat this, families layered straw and rushes on sleeping platforms and floors, adding insulation and absorbing dampness. Animals sharing the home added another layer of complexity to the air quality and humidity. Goats, chickens, and other livestock huddled close for warmth, but they also contributed moisture and odours. Their presence meant the air was thick with the mingled scents of earth smoke, sweat, and animal musk. A sensory tapestry that was normal, even comforting to the inhabitants, but likely bewildering to modern noses. The medieval home was not static. It was an ecosystem finely tuned over centuries. Its architecture and materials created a microclimate that balanced warmth, ventilation, and moisture as best as possible, given the constraints. The invisible currents of air and smoke moved through the space continuously, shaping how people lived, breathed, and slept. Historians still debate how much medieval peasants consciously understood about this microclimate. Was their management of smoke and air purely intuitive, or did traditional knowledge include sophisticated awareness of ventilation and health? Evidence suggests the latter. Folk wisdom passed orally included practices like positioning the hearth, centrally keeping windows small, and regularly cleaning and whitewashing walls to maintain a healthy living environment. The challenges of living amid smoke and dampness also shaped social and cultural practices. For example, the smoky air influenced cooking methods, social gatherings, and even health perceptions. Some believed smoke had purifying properties, while others suffered chronic respiratory issues. Such conditions also affected the sick and elderly disproportionately, adding another layer to the hardships of medieval life. Managing this invisible hearth, the flow of air, smoke, and moisture required constant vigilance. Too little ventilation, and the smoke choked the household. Too much, and the cold crept in, threatening hypothermia. Your family's survival depended on striking this delicate balance every day. In this smoky, dimly lit cocoon, life pulsed with rhythms dictated by fire and breath. The house itself seemed alive, its walls absorbing stories, laughter, and tears, while its invisible currents carried the essence of medieval existence. This was not just shelter, it was a home shaped by the elemental dance of nature and human resilience. As you settle near the hearth, feeling the warmth against your chilled skin, and watching the smoke drift upward in lazy spirals, you become part of that ancient rhythm. You breathe in the air thick with history, and you live in the invisible hearth that sustained generations before you.